So my Joker brother Lucid asked this question to rank these statements about unarmed combat and martial arts from worst to best. For me personally, you can separate these up into two categories. Statements that have some value but not as much weight, so secondary statements, and then statements that have a lot of value and a lot of weight behind them. Let's list the statements, in my opinion, that are secondary. They have some value and some weight to them, but not as good as the best statements. Starting off is master of armed and unarmed combat. That's all well and good. We don't know how good of a master you are or how much you have mastered, so it's kind of vague. World's greatest trained hand-to-hand combatant is actually a good statement, but also very vague. I could be trained by Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback of all time, and get the best training, but I could still suck at being a quarterback. Master martial artist is a statement that a lot of people have. You can be a master martial artist, but it doesn't tell you the level of mastery or how much you know or how much you have mastered. And the same can kind of be said about master of martial arts. But let's talk about the three statements that I think hold the most value and weight behind them. First is the world's greatest hand-to-hand combatant. This is a very strong statement because it is positioning you as the best. It does not matter your level of mastery or how much you know or your experience. You are declared the greatest hand-to-hand combatant. Masterful fighter is probably the weakest of the three best statements, but this one denotes that despite whatever you know or your experience, you are a masterful fighter. You can know one martial art or you can know 100 martial arts. You are still considered a masterful fighter. And last is master of all martial arts, which is a great statement to have because it shows the range, breadth, and amount that you know. And in order to be a master of all martial arts, you have to have a certain level of mastery, skill, and ability. It's not something that's just anyone can have. With that being said, the best statement is probably world's greatest hand-to-hand combatant because that denotes your position. But I would argue right under that is master of all martial arts and then masterful fighter. But you know what's really funny? This debate is all well and good about which statement is better than the other. And it is an important discussion. But there's one character who has all these statements. Yeah, love him or hate him, Batman has all these statements in spades. Not only does Batman have the best statements of being a martial artist, but he has the most amount of them. Being a master of all forms of martial arts. Being called the world's greatest skilled combatant. Being called the world's greatest warrior. Being called the living legend, the man that's said to be most skilled, most determined, and most artful fighter in the world. The world's greatest proponent. Versed in nearly every known weapon. Batman is the most highly skilled fighter in the world, possibly the greatest human fighter the world has ever known. Being called the best in the world. Master of fighting styles. And the list goes on and on. Batman has so many statements. All the statements you listed. More so than any other character. And that's just a couple of the statements. There's a bunch more. But here's the beauty about Batman. Not only does Batman have the most amount of statements, not only does Batman have the best statements, but Batman also has the feats, the fights, the stories, the experience, the battle IQ, and everything else that ties into being the best fighter. There will always be the Lady Shivas, Richard Dragons, and Karate Kids from DC, or the T'Challas and Steve Rogers and Daredevils over at Marvel. But at the end of the day, Batman has the most amount of statements, the best statements, the battle IQ, the experience, the feats, the fights, the everything that backs up everything that is said about him. Frankly, at the end of the day, there should be one more statement about martial arts and hand-to-hand combat and thrown on there. It should be Batman.